Hello, my name is Jari, and I would like to continue reading Candide by Voltaire in English and learning some words with it, some definitions, some translations, and so on. So, welcome. So, he couldn't for the soul of him conceive how he came to be a hero. Yeah, that's a place to be. One fine spring morning he took it into his head to take a walk, and he marched straight forward, conceiving it to be a privilege of the human species as well as the brute creation to make use of their legs how and when they pleased. Brute. For example, in cybersecurity, or there's a concept called brute force. So, brute it means merely physical or fundamental, inescapable, and unpleasant. Also characterized by an absence of reasoning and intelligence. So, he had not gone about 2 leagues. 2 leagues. A former measure of distance by land, usually about 3 miles. When he was overtaken by 4 other heroes 6 feet high, who bound him neck and heels and carried him into a dungeon. A court-martial court-martial means judicial court for trying members of the armed services accused of offenses against military law. And he was asked which he liked better, to run the gauntlet 36 times through the whole regiment, or to have his brains blown out with 12 musket balls. Gauntlet. Do you know the word gauntlet? This used to be a game, a computer game name when I was a kid. Gauntlet, it means there's different meanings, but to run the gauntlet means go through an intimidating or dangerous crowd or experience in order to reach a goal. And historically, undergo the military punishment of receiving blows while running between 2 rows of men with sticks. To run the gauntlet 36 times through the whole regiment, or to have his brains blown out with 12 musket balls. Musket, you of course know what that is. It's an infantryman's light gun with a long barrel. Yeah. In German, die Muskete, and in Finnish musketti. In vain did he remonstrate. That's an interesting word. In German, protestieren. Make a forcefully reproachful protest. Remonstrate. Make a forcefully reproachful protest. To them that the human will is free and that he chose neither. They obliged him to make a choice, and he determined in virtue of the divine gift called free will to run the gauntlet 36 times. He had gone through his discipline twice, and the regiment being composed of 2,000 men, they composed for him exactly 4,000 strokes, which laid bare all of his muscles and nerves, from the nape of his neck to his stern. Whoa. Nape. The back of a person's neck. Yeah, that's nape. Nape of his neck to his stern as a noun. The rearmost part of a ship or boat or a person's bottom in a humorous way. As they were preparing to make him set out the third time, our young hero, unable to support it any longer, begged as a favor that they would do so obliging to shoot him through the head. This is so black comedy, black satire. It's like oblique. Let's hear for this word the best pronunciation.
Oblige.
So, make legally or morally bound to an action or course of action. In German, jemandem vorschreiben etwas zu tun. Määrätä joku tekemään jotain. In Finnish, oblige. So. The favor being granted, a bandage was tied over his eyes, and he was made to kneel down. At that very instant, his Bulgarian Majesty, happening to pass by, made a stop and inquired into the delinquent's crime, and being a prince of great penetration, delinquent, that means typically of a young person of showing or characterized by a tendency to commit crime. Randalier in German and Finnish, for example, rikollinen. And being a prince of great penetration. Penetration, well, you might be aware of some other meanings for the word. I won't go to them, into them, I should say, right now. But rather I will highlight the third meaning, which is the perspective of understanding. The perspective understanding of complex matters. So I will highlight, like said, that meaning here. The perspective understanding of complex matters, penetration. So he was a prince of great penetration. He found from what he heard of Candide that he was a young metaphysician. Is it correctly pronounced or not at all? Let's find out.
Metaphysician.
Metaphysician. That's my Finnish pronunciation. Entirely ignorant of the world and therefore out of his great clemency. That's an interesting word. Mercy, lenience. Die milde. Armeliaisuus. He condescended. This is a nice word as well. Show feelings of superiority. Geruhen. Alentua. To pardon him, for which his name will be celebrated in every journal and in every age. A skillful surgeon made a cure. The flagellated Candide in 3 weeks by means of emollient unguents prescribed by Dioscorides. Emollient means having the quality of softening or soothing the skin. And unguent is a soft, greasy. His sores were now skimmed over and he was able to march when the king of the Bulgarians gave battle to the king of the Abares. And that was the chapter 2, and I will proceed to chapter 3. How Candide escaped from the Bulgarians and what befell him afterwards. Again the word befall. Never was anything so gallant. That's a nice word. Brave, heroic. So well accoutred, clothed or equipped. So brilliant and so finely disposed. Dispose is a beautiful word. As the 2 armies, the trumpets fives, a kind of small shrill flute used with a drum in military bands. Hautboys is an archaic form of oboe. Drums and cannon made such harmony as never was heard in hell itself. The entertainment began by a discharge of a cannon, which in the twinkling of an eye laid flat about 6,000 men on each side. The musket bullets swept away out of the best all possible worlds 9 or 10,000 squandrels. That's a a scoundrel as a noun is dishonest or unscrupulous person, a rogue, that infested its surface. The bayonet is a blade that may be fixed to the muzzle of a rifle. Was next the sufficient reason of the deaths of several thousand. The whole might amount to 30,000 souls. Candide trembled like a philosopher and concealed himself as well as he could during this heroic butchery. At length, so at length it means in detail or fully. While the two kings were causing Te Deums to be sung in their camps, Candide took a resolution to go and reason somewhere else upon causes and effects. After passing over heaps of dead or dying men, the first place he came to was a neighboring village in the Abararian territories, which had been burned to the ground by the Bulgarians, agreeably to the laws of war. Here lay a number of old men covered with wounds, who beheld their wives dying with their throats cut and hugging their children to their breasts, all stained with blood. These several young virgins, whose bodies had been ripped open after they had satisfied the natural necessities of the Bulgarian heroes, breathed their last, while others, half burned in the flames, begged to be dispatched out of the world. The ground about them was covered with the brains, arms, and legs of dead men. Candide made all of the haste he could to another village which belonged to the Bulgarians, and there he found the heroic Abares had enacted the same tragedy. Enact means to put into practice. Thence means as a consequence. Continuing to walk over palpitating limbs. It's beating rapidly, strongly, or irregularly. Like we can say that if someone's heart is palpitating. Palpitating limbs or through ruined buildings, at length he arrived beyond the theatre of war with a little provision in his budget. And Miss Cunegonda's image in his heart. When he arrived in Holland, his provision failed him. But having heard that the inhabitants of the country were all rich and Christians, he made himself sure of being treated by them in the same manner as the Baron's castle before he had been driven thence through the power of Miss Cunegonda's bright eyes. He asked charity of several grave-looking people, who one and all answered him that if he continued to follow this trade, they would have him sent to the house of correction. So house of correction sounds like the facility in a former world for correcting people, as said, where he should be thought to get his bread. He next addressed himself to a person who had just come from haranguing a numerous assembly. Harangue, a noun, is a lengthy and aggressive speech for a whole hour on the subject of charity. The orator squinting at him under his broad-brimmed hat. Yeah, Bream is of course the edge of a. Ask him sternly what brought him thither toward that place, and whether he was for the good old cause. Sir, said Candide, in a submissive manner, I conceive there can be no effect without cause. Everything is necessarily concatenated, meaning linking together in a chain of series. Yeah. And arrange for the best. It was necessary that I should be banished from the presence of Miss Gunegunda, that I should afterwards run the gauntlet, and it's necessary I should beg my bread till I'm able to get it. All this could not have been otherwise. Hark you, friend, said the orator, do you hold the Pope the Antichrist? Truly, I never heard anything about it, said Candide, but whether he is or not, I am in want of something to eat. Yeah, that's an interesting response, or maybe a pragmatical one. Thou deservest not to eat, to drink, or to drink. Remember, thou in the former world, it used to mean you, simply you, thee, thou, thou. They were declinations of the word you in the modern English, while there's only you. Wretch monster, that thou art. That thou art means simply that you are, because it's the old word. Hence, avoid my sight, nor ever come near me again while thou livest. The orator's wife happened to put her head out of the window at that instant when seeing a man who doubted whether the Pope was Antichrist, she discharged upon his head a utensil of water, a container. Good heavens, to what excess does the religious zeal transport womankind, women considered collectively. Yeah, that's an interesting word. In German, das weibliche Geschlecht. A man who had never been christened, an honest Anabaptist named James, was witness to the cruel and ignominious, deserving or causing public disgrace or shame, treatment showed to one of his brethren, to a rational two-footed unfledged being. Unfledged means a bird yet not fledged, or a person of a person inexperienced, youthful, unfledged. Moved with a pity, he carried moved with a pity, he carried him to his own house, caused him to be cleaned, gave him meat and drink, and made him a present of 2 florins. That's a former British coin. At the same time proposing to instruct him in his own trade, weaving Persian silks, which are fabricated in Holland. Candide, penetrated with so much goodness, threw himself at his feet, crying, now I'm convinced that my master Pangloss told me the truth when he said that everything was for the best in this world, for I am infinitely more affected with your extraordinary generosity than with the inhumanity of that gentleman in the black cloak and his wife. And that was the chapter 3. And I will continue to chapter 4. So I hope you're still around. Chapter 4. How Candide found his old master Pangloss again and what happened to him. The next day, as Candide was walking out, he met a beggar, all covered with scabs. So scab. A dry, rough, protective crust that forms over a cut or a wound during healing. His eyes sunk in his head, the end of his nose eaten off, his mouth drawn on one side, his teeth as black as cloak, snuffling and couching. Snuffle, it means breathe nosily through the nose. And couching most violently, and every time he attempted to spit out, dropped a tooth. A candid divide between compassion and horror, but giving way to the former. So giving way to former, it means compassion, because compassion here is the so-called former, and the other one is latter. The latter would be horror. Bestowed, that's also an old word. Bestow, confer or present. Verlaihen, myöntää. On this shocking figure, the 2 florins, which the honest Anabaptist James had just before given to him, the spectre, a ghost, or something widely feared as a possible unpleasant or dangerous occurrence, looked at him very earnestly, shed tears, and threw his arms about his neck. Candide started back aghast, meaning filled with horror or shock. Alas, said the one wretch to the other, don't you know, dear Pangloss, what do I hear? Is it you, my dear master, you I behold in this piteous plight? What a dreadful misfortune has befallen you? Again this nice word. What has made you leave the most magnificent and delightful of all castles? What has become of Miss Cunegunda, the mirror of young ladies, and nature's masterpiece? O Lord, cried Pangloss, I am so weak I cannot stand. Upon which Candide instantly led him to the Anabaptist's stable and procured him something to eat. Procure, obtain. Beschaffen. As soon as Pangloss had a little refreshed himself, Candide began to repeat his inquiries concerning Miss Cunegunda. She's dead, replied the other. Dead! Cried Candide, and immediately fainted away. His friend restored him by the help of little bad vinegar, which he found by chance in the stable. And stable means building set apart and adapted for keeping horses. Yeah, that's stable. Talli. Stall, der Stall in German. Candide opened his eyes and again repeated, "Dead! Is Miss Cunegonde dead? Ah, where is the best of worlds now? But of what illness did she die? Was it of grief on seeing her father kick me out of his magnificent castle?" "No," replied Pangloss. Her body was stripped open by the Bulgarian soldiers after they had subjected her to as much cruelty as a damsel could survive. They knocked the Baron, her father, on the head for attempting to defend her. "My lady, her mother was cut in pieces. My poor pupil was served just in the same manner as his sister. And as for the castle, they have not left one stone upon another. They have destroyed all the ducks and sheep, the barns and the trees. But we have had our revenge, for the Abares have done the very same thing in a neighboring barony which belonged to a Bulgarian lord." At hearing this, Candide fainted away a second time, but notwithstanding, having come to himself again. So, withstanding, remaining undamaged. He said all that it became him to say. He inquired into the cause and effect as well as into sufficing reason that had reduced Pangloss to so miserable a condition. "Alas," replied the preceptor, "it was love, the comfort of the human species, love, the preserver of the universe, the soul of all sensible beings, love, tender love, alas," said Candide. "I have had some knowledge of love myself, this sovereign of hearts, this soul of souls, yet it never cost me more than a kiss and 20 kicks on the backside. But how could this beautiful cause produce in you so hideous an effect?" Pangloss made an answer in these terms: "Oh, my dear Candide, you must remember Paquette, that pretty wench," which means a archaic girl or woman, "who waited on our noble baroness. In her arms I tasted the pleasures of paradise, which produce these hell torments with which you see me devoured. She was infected with an ailment and perhaps has since died of it. She received this present of a learned Franciscan who derived it from the fountainhead." And fountainhead means an original source of something. Fountainhead. He was inadapted. That is a nice word as well. Owing gratitude for service of favor. For it to an old countess. The wife or a widow of a count or earl. Who had it to it of a captain of horse, who had it of a marchioness. which means the wife or widow of a marquess. And marquess is a British nobleman ranking above an earl, who had it of a page. The page had it of a Jesuit who during his novitiate had it in a direct line from one of the fellow adventures of Christopher Columbus. For my part, I shall give it to nobody. I am a dying man. O sage Pangloss, cried Candide, what a strange genealogy is this! Is it not the devil? Is not the devil the root of it? Not at all, replied the great man. It was a thing unavoidable, a necessary ingredient in the best of worlds. For if Columbus had not got in an island in America this disease which contaminates the source of generation and frequently impedes propagation. Let's check that out.
Propagation.
Impedes propagation itself. Propagation meaning the breeding of specimens or the action of widely spreading or promoting an idea. Action of widely spreading an idea. And is evidently opposed to the great end of nature. We should have had neither chocolate nor coccino, and that is a scarlet dye used chiefly for coloring food. In German, Koshenille, and in Finnish, Kokenilli. It is also to be observed that even to the present time in this continent of ours, this malady, meaning a disease or ailment, ein Leiden or sairaus. Like our religious controversies, is peculiar to ourselves. The Turks, the Indians, the Persians, the Chinese, the Siamese, and the Japanese are entirely unacquainted with it. But there is a sufficing reason for them to know it in a few centuries. In the meantime, it is making prodigious havoc among us, especially in those armies composed of well-disciplined hirelings, who determine the fate of nations. For we may safely affirm that when an army of 30,000 men engages, that's a military term in this context, engage in a battle. Another equal in size, there are about 20,000 infected with syphilis on each side. Very surprising indeed, said Candide, but you must get cured. Lord, help me. How can I, said Pangloss. My dear friend, I have not a penny in the world, and you know one cannot be bled or have an enema without money. This last speech had its effect on Candide. He flew to the charitable Anabaptist James. He flung himself at his feet and gave him so striking a picture of the miserable condition of his friend that the good man, without any further hesitation, agreed to take Dr. Pangloss into his house and to pay for his cure. The cure was effected with with only the loss of one eye and an ear. As B wrote a good hand and understood accounts tolerably well, the Anabaptist made him his bookkeeper at the expiration of 2 months, meaning the end of a period or time, being obliged by some mercantile affairs, mercantile meaning relating to trade or commerce, to go to Lisbon. He took the 2 philosophers with him in the same ship. Pangloss, during the course of the voyage, explained to him how everything was so constituted that it could not be better. James did not quite agree with him on this point. Men, said he, must in some things have deviated from their original innocence, for they were not born wolves. And yet they worry one another like those beasts of prey. God never gave them 24-pounders, pounder meaning a gun, nor bayonets, again it's the blade, and yet they have made cannon and bayonets to destroy one another. To this account I might add not only bankruptcies, but the law which seizes on the effects of bankrupts only to cheat the creditors. All this was indispensably necessary, meaning absolutely necessary. Replied the one-eyed doctor, for private misfortunes are public benefits, so that the more private misfortunes there are, the greater is the general good. While he was arguing in this manner, the sky was overcast. Covered with clouds or shade. Trübe in German and Pilvinen in Finnish. The winds blew from the 4 quarters of the compass, and the ship was assailed. Make a concerted or violent attack, or come upon someone suddenly and strongly, by a most terrible tempest, which is a violently windy storm within sight of the port of Lisbon. And with this I will quit, and thank you for watching and hearing and listening. Till the next time. Ciao.